All right, we're going to continue reviewing the hand history for CzechRaizor. Let's go ahead and get to it.
Well, I wonder if it's better of two options. Yeah. So now we are all the way to hand 260 and approaching halfway.
It's always interesting to see which hands people are folding when they are shallow in this spot. I imagine you play the short stack well. I guess we'll see. But if you are only waiting for nut hands and not shoving in late position, you're probably making some sort of an error. But anyway, just something to be aware of.
There's a raise from EP and I've just got over 6 bigs. So these plays are very straightforward. I should just click all-in button and see what happens. Yeah, got raised call by 7, managed to hold. Good.
It's pretty wide open right there. The opponent should certainly
So
just
the
fold.
next one, which is 8-7. Blinds are 2.5 or 5k. With 8-7 in a big blind. Facing this 8BB, 8 big shove, 3.2 M. At this point, I can see that these guys got reg stats 29, 26, 9. So he's reasonably aggressive reg and should be shoving Nash charts, Nash push fold charts, which means for 3M, 42.4. So it's just around 40% of hands, which are hands like king deuce plus suited plus king 5 off plus queen 5 suited plus queen 8 off plus jack 7 as jack 9 off, and so on and so on. So with this wide range I'm doing fine, and it is I believe it is a mandatory call, so I had to call it off. Let's see what I did. Yes, I'll press the call button.
I agree, this is just a pretty easy call. I'd be interested to see the M push fold charts you've been using. Maybe you could send those to me. I'd be happy to check those out. But you seem to have your numbers down, which is fantastic. So that's excellent to hear.
And I ran into the top of his range, which obviously happens sometimes. And didn't strike out or anything, so I lost this spot. Right, hand 276, blinds are 3 and 6k, so I'm still very shallow with 5.4 M. At this point you can notice that the antes are more than 100% of a big blind, so it's a very significant part of chips in play.
You'll find that's often the case in live poker, not so much online, but in live poker, for example, at 6,000 big blind, the ante may be 1,000. So if there's 9 people at the table, there'll be 9,000 in the antes, and that's a big ante for live poker, but it is just a standard blind level. So it's kind of interesting to see how online, I think they try to keep the antes somewhat consistent at about between 10 and 12.5%, but in live poker it varies much more.
Same guy, this random movie raises from MP1, and I think got enough of a hand to go over the top and reshove. My borderline will be pocket 7s. I'm not sure what I would do with pocket 6s, but 7s plus is a shove for me here, and that's presumably what I did. Yes, that's right.
I agree. Seems good.
And I got rejammed by this 2018 guy.
That is bad for you.
He starts and the original razor folds.
That's
and
lucky.
I managed to win another flip with his ace king. Alright. Pretty standard spot in my view. Skipping on to the next one, which is ace 10 in a big blind. The blinds are still 3 and 6k. And let's see what happens here. Alright, this is very straightforward. It's just 5 bigs shove, and I'm calling it off with ace 10. There's nothing to comment on really, this one. Yeah, lost this one, which is kind of good zigging and zagging when you lose small pots and win the important ones that are for tournament life or for big top laps. It's part of the variance sometimes as well. Alright. Blinds are 4 and 8, okay. We are 8-handed, and I got double ace check off in the big blind. Right, this is really interesting. There's an open from an active 33-23 guy, 9% 3 bet, but it's very, very low sample, just 31 hands. I'm thinking, as I do not remember what I did in hand. It looks quite strong as he raises into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 shove stacks. So it looks quite strong. Let's see what I did.
I would definitely prefer flat in the spot for the reasons you just suggested. And I would be flatting with all reasonable hands in this scenario, given the big blind is fairly large. Notice big blind's now 1,000. So I'm just flatting and seeing what happens, just like I would call with a lot of other hands. This is a nice hand to have in the flatting range because it will keep him in with his worst aces and, king jack, queen jack, etc. Whereas if you shove, you'll likely get him to fold the bad aces and king jack and whatnot. So I think I like calling. You're going to play somewhat poorly after the flop, but I don't really see any other good options.
Oh, I decided to flat? Okay. I think, given the fact that the opening did so many shove stacks, I assigned him pretty strong range, so I didn't want to reach out. And I am not clear about the situation about this spot, whether it's okay to, it should be okay to defend, but whether it's going to be more profitable to flat rather than go over the top and jam all in. And we are to the flop that's 8-4-9 with flash draw. I completely missed, and I'm facing a very low c-bet, which is under a third of a pot. So I decided to raise, which seems to me like a bit of a button clicking. But my hand is not strong enough to call on this texture, and I think I just read into the sizing being really weak, betting this texture under a third of a pot. I think I did not expect him to bet the sizing with a strong hand or overpass. Let's see if it gets through.
So this isn't a spot where I wouldn't say it's button clicking, but it's certainly aggressive. Your hand is not particularly good to be check raising in this spot because you have, I guess you have no equity, but if you did have a draw of some sort, I imagine you would just check call. So I'm kind of having a hard time coming up with many hands that you will want to check raise on this board for value, besides sets and two pairs. Like ace 9, you're not really trying to check raise and get it in, I don't think. So I think you're probably going to want to check call with a lot of your hands in this spot. So when you check raise, it should be very bluff heavy or very nut heavy, very polarized. It's interesting to see him shove because I would expect him to call a lot of the time because you would not think that you would check raise your draws when he gives you such a good price. But he did shove, so clearly it didn't work out this time. I tend to not read into bet sizes, but unless you have a lot of experience with players, but maybe you know that in your general player pool that like 90% of people or 70% of people, something like that, will always bet big with their nut hands here and small with their ace-king type hands. So if that's the case, I don't really mind check raising. I think it's okay, just because this board should be way better for you than it should be for him. And, this is certainly near the bottom of your calling range, if you were to put this in your calling range. It's probably near the bottom of it. So I guess it's okay to check raise. You have some equity if he does call. So yeah, I guess this is fine. I would probably just fold in this spot, but check raising is never that bad.
Okay. Well, I can credibly rep 8. Not sure if I can rep 9s. I should have probably shoved those pre-flop. Maybe I do have some 8-9 suited, maybe even 8-9 off. Because I would have some strong flush draws. I do not block Jack of Diamonds, so it's like Jack 10 Diamonds, Queen Jack of Diamonds, Queen 10 of Diamonds. Like strong diamond draw with cut short or open ender, 6-7 Diamonds maybe. Yeah. And so there are some strong draws that I would have, and it was some legitimate hands. But I'm looking back at this sport in retrospect, I'm not sure. It's hard for me to assess this correctly.
You really just want to ask yourself. The one issue here is that I think given his small flop bet, you really do just want to stick around kind of wide. And I don't think you want to be check raising too often because it is going to force you off of your hands kind of like this hand. And hands like Jack 10, for example, you don't want to check raise those, I don't think. So it's just hard to come up with very many bluffs you want to have. And it's also kind of hard to come up with very many nut hands you should have as well. So your opponent probably just had an overpair, didn't care. But given you should have very few nut hands, it makes check raising not quite as nice, but I'm okay with it just because it's so easy for your opponent to have nothing on this board. And it's so easy for you to have something.
Yeah, so I just try to abuse low c-bet size. It's quite possible that he's at the very top of his range, pocket 8s, pocket 9s. or maybe like aces with ace of diamond, so he's not worried about another diamond coming and falling off on the turn.
If he had a hand like aces with the ace of diamonds, you would think you would just call, though. I mean, I would be shocked if... I mean, I wouldn't be shocked because it's what bad players do, but if this guy did have pocket aces or even pocket like tens with the 10 of diamonds, he just should call every time to give you all the spaz opportunity possible.
Kings with a king of diamond, so a hand that doesn't need any protection really, and he's not worried about getting gold cards or scare cards on the turn. Alright, so moving on. Blinds are 6 and 12, okay, and we are sitting on pocket nines, facing EP raise. I think this should be a standard reshove. B is a guy with reggy stats. I'm definitely ahead of his EP2 range, so I think I should have gone all in.
I like an all in here as well. It gets a little bit dicier if you were deeper, like say you had 250k, then it becomes much nastier. I think you'd still probably just want to shove, but I would be very unhappy in that spot. I actually don't think folding or re-raising small is that bad. Calling is, I guess, okay, but with this stack size, I think all in is the only option. The one reason you have to be very careful here is because this guy raising from early positions should have a very good range. It's not like he should just be opening with all sorts of garbage, but he is loose enough to where I think it's fine to shove pocket nines here.
Do get called by one or two worse pairs, I imagine, and I held up and got up to 350k here, which is a decent stack. 30 big blinds, just under 30 bigs. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I do not like opening queen check off, although there are not too many reshowing stacks. It still will be too loose at this point.
That's a fine fold.
Hand number 370, Jack 10 off in the big blind.
From early position, I'm a really big fan of not being blatantly crazy from early position. You just don't have to do anything. You don't have to be playing super wide for early position because so many people can just play reasonably snug and ruin your day.
We are 9-handed, and at this point I still got under 30 in big blinds, so I believe I would have some options once facing open raise, and we are facing an open from small blind. Sizing just over min raise. I think I'm very positive that the only correct option here is to flat call and see the flop. With this hand, it is a decent hand, and there's no need to 3-bet fold. I do not have any blockers. The hand is strong enough to see a flop in position, so I hope I decided to call. Yes, okay, fine.
I completely agree. I hate your opponent's pre-flop raise size because he's giving you fantastic odds just to call and try to flop well. So I think this was a pretty big mistake by your opponent. If he's going to raise, he definitely wants to make it bigger. But I really like using a limp 100% strategy from the small blind, and I actually talk about that at pokercoaching.com, and this is a spot where I would limp, not necessarily 100% of hands, but 100% of my range. This is a spot where I would strongly consider limping probably 80% of hands. I don't think it can ever be that bad.
So I call, and the flop is Queen Jack 9, which should hit my range a decent amount, and at the same time, so given this logic, given this thinking, my opponent should not be betting this too liberally. He should be check folding like all his ace X's and missed pocket pairs, and at least I expect him to.
So given, you have to be careful expecting things about people's flop tendencies. A lot of people will just be incredibly straightforward and not too thinking. They'll just bet their good hands and check their bad hands. Or some people just bet everything because they were the pre-flop raiser. So be careful reading into that too much.
Do so. His overall C-bet 77%, which seems to me on the average, right in the middle somewhere, among the tournament ranks at low stakes. Alright. So he does up to C-bet, 36k to 88, about 40% of what. So it is on the smaller side, and for me, it is, or to me, it's a very clear call. I should just go ahead and call. there's no need to turn this hand into bluff, and I got lots of ways to improve. Should I be behind at this point? So I hope I just flat called here.
I agree.
Alright, good.
You definitely don't want to raise this board, because if you raise and get called, you're usually pretty unhappy. Whereas if you just call, you keep him with all of his junk.
This turn is very, very interesting. It is a card. It is a card that he should barrel at the same time. With the logic that I mentioned on the flop, he should not be c-betting ace x's. So it improves hands like ace king. I'm blocking ace jack, so maybe ace queen, ace king. I'm not sure if he c-bets ace 9 on this flop. So I'm not 100% sure if it's really a bad card.
So again, it's hard to really assume things about your opponent. Also, your opponent could just easily have ace queen, ace jack, or ace 9, or ace 10 and decide to bet. So you can't just read into it as the guy can't have all ace x's, but it's obviously a bad card for you because there are just many hands that now improve, and you can't really predict how the guy's going to play, I don't think.
This is really interesting because I did not see him c-betting too many misses on this flop. So let's see what happens on this ace. Okay. At this point, I think it's very, very likely that he's got some sort of showdown value that's worse than ace, or he could. I can't really see my opponent checking 2-pair on this very draw-heavy board, so I should probably take out ace queen out of his range, ace jack, ace 9, and sets and really, really strong hands. Maybe he's getting tricky with king 10, especially if he's got king 10 of diamond. But it looks to me like king queen, queen 10, a hand with showdown value. That's worse than ace or weaker than ace. Right.
Again, it's just hard for me to really narrow this guy's range. I mean, I think he could easily have a lot of aces. I think he could easily have a queen, although he may or may not should bet the turn with a queen. Same thing for a jack. He probably shouldn't bet the turn with a jack. So it's an interesting spot where now he becomes somewhat polarized to aces and then air. But again, there really should not be a whole lot of air in the guy's range. So I imagine he's going to be somewhat polarized, but it's not like he bet big on the turn, right? He bet somewhat small. Oh, no, this is the flop. I'm confused.
Take out ace queen out of his range, ace jack. This turn is point, so I hope I just flat called here. Alright, good.
Oh, it went check on the turn.
This turn is very, very interesting.
I'm sorry.
Sets and really, really strong hands. Maybe
right, so it went check. When he checks the turn, I'm sorry about that. If he bets the turn, you definitely are in the polarized spot. Whenever he checks the turn, though, as he did, you do have to be much more concerned because now he should be checking a lot of the queens, a lot of the jacks, maybe even an ace. So, yeah, I like the check behind.
Showdown value. That's worse than ace or weaker than ace. Right. Here's a 9. I don't think he should have too many. Maybe some 9-10s that he would see bet flop. I'm blocking 9-10. Yeah. If I was behind on turn, I don't think that 9 changes anything. And once he bets river, I think I should be folding. Not really being worried about 9, but he might be worried betting queen. Or he decided to get tricky and check. Well, I'm not sure whether he would do any check backing with aces on this turn.
Yeah, so I think the 9 is definitely bad for you. I don't really think you can make big assumptions this guy does not have a 9 because he would certainly consider betting the flop with all of his 9s. I just think you're reading too much into this. I think you're reading too much into basic-ish strategy. I would just assume the guy's range is wide and somewhat concealed to where you don't really have a great read of what exactly is going on in the spot. I don't think I would value bet the river. I think this is very thin. I would just check behind and hope to win. There may be some merit to betting tiny on the river if you... I mean, this is super exploitable, right? Like, if this guy just check jams you or check raises you, you are so unhappy. I just don't see the purpose of opening yourself up to this. And also, what are you trying to get called by? You're trying to get called by, like, pocket 4s that bet the flop or random king high? I do not like the river bet at all.
Right, the hands. I'm not a big fan of this bet. I suppose I kind of viewed that he would be value betting Queen X, King Queen, or Queen 10, given the action that they went check check on the turn. But I could have some 9x's or in my range like 9, or 9-10, or King 9, 9-8. Yeah, I could have some 9s in my range, so it would not be easy for me to get paid. I guess I was trying to get paid by King High or some low pocket pairs, but in retrospect, I do not like this bet.
Yeah, I mean, you really just have to expect the guy to have bet the flop with a low pocket pair and will then call you on this obviously scary river. So I'm definitely not a fan with a small bet on the river. I mean, maybe there's a tiny bit of value to be had, but especially against someone who is aggressive enough, I really just don't want to open the door for them to crush me.